Europe looked like the frozen north. Glaciers hundreds of kilometers in height covered the earth, right up to the shores of the Mediterranean. It was in this extreme environment that two great predators made an alliance that changed our destiny for always. By becoming partners with wolves, Cro-Magnon humans took a path which transformed them into modern humans. By becoming partners with mankind, wolves took a path which led them to become dogs. Co-evolution which modified the way of life of humans and transformed the wolf into diverse breeds with incredibly varied appearances. But nature didn't wait for mankind to impose its selection. On other continents, in other ecosystems, other canids have adapted their morphologies to survive and develop. Raccoon heads, bat ears, long, stilt-like paws. Their sometimes extravagant appearance can seem far from that of wolves, but they are nonetheless part of the same family. And just like their cousins who linked their destiny to that of humans 20,000 years ago, their lives and sometimes their survival is largely dependent on man. How will the golden jackal adapt to the upheaval of its environment? What fate awaits raccoon dogs arriving at the gates of Europe? Will the maned wolf survive when in South America, its natural habitat is giving place little by little to immense fields of corn and soya? Far from its coasts and beaches, away from its tourist attractions, Brazil hides a little-known treasure, the Cerrado. However, this equatorial savanna is one of the most incredible ecosystems in the world. Breathtaking landscapes that shelter over 160,000 species of plants and animals, most of which are found nowhere else. It's the habitat of the giant anteater, jaguars, and ocelot. It's also the only place in the world where the maned wolf lives. This canid has no equivalent in other dogs. If we compare it to our domestic companions, it has the weight of a spaniel and the size of a German mastiff. As in the story, this wolf has big ears the better to hear you with, and a long nose the better to smell you with. But it also has large paws to be able to better cross the high grasses of the Cerrado. To complete all this, it has a dark mane which gives it its name, a surprising one, because to see it, it looks more like a fox on stilts than a wolf with a mane. Its appearance makes it a real fairy tale character. Once upon a time, in the province of Minas Gerais, there where the tropical forest gives way to the Cerrado, there was a priest, a plate of food, and a maned wolf.
Há mais ou menos 38 anos
More or less
atrás,
40 years ago,
dos padres
one of the fathers
que
who
moravam
lived in
aqui no
Caraça
Caraça
began to notice
começou a
that there were
perceber
rubbish bins
que
which had been upset.
algumas lixeiras estavam sendo remexidas. Então ele começou
And so he began to bring a plate with meat and place it directly here before the stairs
e
in front of
colocar
the
logo
church.
ali embaixo na escada, em frente à igreja. E ele começou a perceber e a observar
Then he began to
que
see
todas
and
as
observe
noites
that every
então
night the
o lobo
wolf would
vinha
come to the place to eat the
até
meat.
a bandeja para comer a carne. E aos poucos,
And
ele
little by little, he
começou
began to come closer to the
aproximando a
plate
bandeja
here at the door
aqui
of
na
the church.
porta da igreja.
A sanctuary is a preserved place where nature can develop without suffering the pressure of mankind. The influence of a nearby tropical forest regularly bathes the place in a thick mist, adding to the mystic atmosphere of this church lost in the middle of nature. Fairy tale scenery, where it is easy to imagine under cover of darkness an animal creeping out of the woods. What is the reason that pushes this predator to overcome its prudence? Are canids predisposed to domestication? We know now that they are particularly sensitive to oxytocin, and exchanging looks provokes for them a spike in this hormone secretion associated with love and attachment, just like humans. It's very likely that, 20,000 years ago, wolves gathered around places where humans threw their waste, and as things went along, thanks to that proximity, and thanks to this common sensitivity to an attachment hormone, humans and wolves tamed each other until they shared their lives. This 20,000-year-old story seems to be being rewritten nowadays in the Caracas sanctuary. The maned wolf which overcomes its fear to accept the offerings of Father Alexandre is not a tamed creature. Everything in its behavior shows that it hasn't given up the suspicion natural to a wild animal. Lights placed for filming the scene disturb it. It hesitates before coming near, making sure it is in no danger before accepting the meal.
Ele tem uma escuta muito atenta, olhar muito vigilante e olfato muito apurado, muito sensível. E pela nossa relação diária, acredito que o lobo-guará, ele já sente um pouco o meu cheiro, né? O meu cheiro, e acredito que ele também assimila um pouco a tonalidade da minha voz. Então, realmente criamos relações de muita proximidade. E acredito que eu criei essa relação de cuidado e de um profundo respeito pelo lobo, porque acredito que o lobo-guará também me faz processo de humanização na minha vida.
In the same way as in The Little Prince of Saint-Exupéry, the priest and the maned wolf attach themselves to each other. Is this the start of a new domestication? In 20,000 years, will there be other species of canids that share the lives of Homo sapiens? In the great family of canids, there are 30 species. Domesticated dogs, whether they be tiny dogs or great big hounds, form just one of these, with other canids making up all the rest of the different species. The physical characteristics which have led scientists to group these species are the displayed and pointed canine teeth, and as well non-retractable claws on their paws, with a special capacity to understand the world through the sense of smell. At the game of natural selection, this family has done quite well. They are present on every continent. And to adapt to all these ecosystems, they have developed an incredible range of morphology and behavior. The polar fox changes its color to hide in the snow. The Otocion has gigantic ears to cool the heat of the desert. The bush dog has palmed paws to fish in the Amazon streams. In the east of Asia, a canid shows remarkable adaptability, which allows it to feel at home in the tropical forests of North Vietnam and in the tundra of eastern Siberia. The raccoon dog. Just a bit bigger than a Yorkshire Terrier, short-legged with its thick silky fur and dark face, it's easy to confuse it with a raccoon, which led English speakers to call it the raccoon dog. The Germans, who didn't yet have much to do with raccoons, called it the marten dog. As for the French, they called it the chien viverrin, referring to the viverrides, a family of spotted carnivore they had met in African colonies. It has to be said that the raccoon dog looks like a lot of things except a dog. For food, it's an opportunist, eating mushrooms, fruit, carrion, insects, snails. When first you watch it, it comes to mind that what's on the menu doesn't much matter, as long as it doesn't take much energy to take it. It's a discreet animal, mostly nocturnal, that lives in the undergrowth and resides in hollow trees or abandoned badger warrens. It's the only canid in the world that hibernates. This behavior allows it to survive the harsh winters of eastern Siberia at the north of its zone of habitation. There, during autumn, the weight of the raccoon dog increases considerably and its fur fills out so as to prepare for long months of fasting. The more winter approaches, the more it looks like an overweight Pekingese. This accumulation of fat and fur makes its movement even more of a waddle. However, hibernation isn't systematic. It depends on the temperature. The raccoon dog remains active, or at least relatively active, as long as the temperature isn't less than -5 centigrade. So they can be heard in winter, giving out little cries more like geese than a dog's bark. Better adapted to warm and dry ecosystems, the golden jackal has in turn a distribution zone which extends from India to the east of Europe and Israel. It's an average-sized canid, no taller than 50 centimeters, the same as a Pyrenean sheepdog. Morphologically, it looks like a large fox or a small wolf. Genetically, it is so close to wolves that crossbreeding would be possible between the two species if the big wolves didn't have an annoying tendency to eat the little jackals. The Sea of Galilee in Israel is an Eden for many birds. Unfortunately for the peace of the inhabitants of this paradise, they also have to contend with a population of golden jackals. Hidden in the hollow of a reed bed, sheltered from view, a small creek has become the playground of a couple of jackals and their young. Watching this family at the beach, it's easy to understand what mad dog actually means. Each root which sticks out is an occasion to scratch, bite, or rip it out. Each ripple a reason to jump in the water. Every bird must be chased. This euphoric and frenetic energy isn't just play. It's a way for the jackal to find food. For its nutrition, this omnivorous canid adapts to the seasons, the environment, and the occasions that it finds. A marsh harrier is pulling out the feathers of a dead crane. After a little hesitation, the jackal approaches, chasing off the bird to become a carrion eater in its turn. Crabs wander on the sand when the waves retreat on the Habernim beach. At the end of its muzzle, it clumsily takes on the shell and pincers of the crustacean. In autumn, on the flank of Jerusalem's hills, it doesn't hesitate to steal a few bunches of grapes before the harvesters come. A little like the raccoon dog, but unlike its cousin, which measures its efforts to find its food, though it makes them if it has to. The golden jackal is ready to face any danger for a meal. In the Negev desert, cattle raisers leave it up to the vultures to dispose of the bodies of their cows. In this chaos of feathers, a jackal tries to take over. The canid attacks this time birds much bigger than it, a lot more of them, and whose beaks, razor sharp, could cut a fatal blow. Growling, whining, and showing its teeth. To win its place in the feast, it has to make itself respected. The maned wolf feeds in two ways, made up by half by little vertebrates. But for the other half of its diet, it feeds on a large amount of a very specific fruit. That's what specially interests Douglas Silver and leads him to brave the streams that the tropical rains have put across his path. The canid has an almost fusional relationship with its ecosystem, and the best way to understand that interdependence is to keep your nose to the ground looking for droppings.
Lobo é um animal territorialista.
The maned wolf is a
Uma das formas
territorial
de ele
animal.
demarcar o seu
It
território
marks its
é
territory by
através
its
das suas
droppings.
fezes. Ele vai defecando
It
em
defecates
pontos
on high
altos
ground, and the
e o
wind
vento
carries
leva
the
o seu
smell
cheiro.
to warn other
Assim, outro
individuals
indivíduo não
that it's their
entra em seu
territory.
território.
I analyze the
É
droppings
importante
to
a gente
better
sempre
understand
avaliar
what the
e
maned wolf
analisar
eats.
o conteúdo das suas fezes, para a gente poder estudar o que ele come.
What Douglas's analysis reveals is that the maned wolf is particularly fond of a fruit belonging to the tomato family.
The maned wolf is an omnivorous animal. And what does that mean?
Ele consome
It eats
carne
meat and fruit.
e frutas, né?
The element which is found in its diet is the fruit of the
mais
wolf.
encontrado na sua dieta é a
It's a
fruta do lobo.
plant of the Solanase
planta
family,
da família
typical
das
of the open
Solanáceas,
spaces of the
Né?
Cerrado.
Tipicamente do cerrado,
Usually where you
de
find
áreas
the wolf,
abertas.
you find the fruit of
Normalmente
the
onde
wolf.
tem o lobo vai ter a fruta do lobo. Ele é o
The
principal
wolf is the
dispersor
main
de
seed
semente.
spreader.
É uma
It's a
fruta
large green
verde,
fruit
grande,
with a very
quando
strong
madura tem
smell when
odor
it's
muito
ripe.
forte, o que atrai o animal.
This is what attracts the animal which has
ele
put this fruit
consome
into
essa
its
fruta,
diet.
Faz parte da sua dieta.
The maned wolf is a species that scientists call keystone because it's indispensable for the correct working of the ecosystem. Like in architecture, if you remove this key element, the whole environment will collapse, and with it all the richness and diversity of the ecosystem. But why is this animal so important for the whole of the Cerrado? It's because of its appetite for this fruit from the tomato family, which grows on a plant called Solanum lycocarpum. The maned wolf eats the fruit, digests it, and spreads the seeds by defecating. This story isn't all that special. It would be quite ordinary. But the Cerrado exists because of fire. It's a savanna made up of high grasses and small trees. Regular fires affect this countryside and keep it open, stopping it from becoming forest. But that means it must constantly regrow. However, the Solanum lycocarpum is a pioneer tree, which means it's the first to grow, and its presence makes the growth of other plants easier. So the Cerrado regenerates, thanks to the maned wolf, which sows the seed of the fruit of the wolf, which then helps the growth of all the other plants. Until the next fire. For an animal, to be classed as a keystone species is an assurance of the benefit of a lot of sympathy and so particular attention. The raccoon dog doesn't have that luck. However, in Japan, it's a star. There, they are called Tanuki. For over 15 centuries, the Tanuki is a yokai, one of those malicious divine spirits that is incarnated in an animal and can change its shape at will. They are often represented with a straw hat and a gourd of sake posed on their bulging stomachs. The Tanuki is a yokai that's very popular in Japan. Miyazaki, the animation master of Ghibli Studios, made them heroes in his film Pompoko. In this film, as in the tradition of Shinto, the most incredible particularity of the Tanuki comes from their testicles. Of a remarkable size and flexibility, they can be, through choice, drums, cushions, nets, weights, or a boat when needed. There are religions where the gods we invent are made to be caricatured. The Tanuki are symbols of luck and prosperity to whom the Japanese address their prayers. They have their temple close to Kyoto, their Tanuki Distan, and their day, the 28th of January. This day, at that place, climb 250 steps lined by statuettes of Tanuki and drink a cup of sake to benefit from protection against cancer and road accidents, to counter evil by evil in some way. But the affection the Japanese show for the Tanuki is expressed as well outside the temples. It is present in all the parks of all the big cities. It's an animal that is fed and adopted as easily as a pet dog. Otherwise, just like the dog, the excesses sometimes linked to that domestication can give it, all through the year, the appearance of a raccoon dog just before hibernation. From the start of the 20th century, it wasn't just for its supernatural powers or its qualities as a pet that people became interested in raccoon dogs. Its thick fur was keenly desired. In Siberia, the zibelins, a species of marten with soft and precious fur, had almost vanished. Too bad. To compensate, the fur of raccoon dogs was used. One animal skin or another is just as good for making a fur coat. Between 1928 and 1955, it is estimated that 9,000 animals were released in western Siberia to increase the natural production of fur. With success, since for nearly 50 years the famous Ushanka of the Red Army was made from the skins of raccoon dogs. Our little canid found itself on a new continent, which suited it rather well. Year after year it reproduced and enlarged its territory. Since then, the European population hasn't stopped growing. It's estimated there are 35,000 in Germany and a handful in France. And since the prehistoric tradition of covering your shoulders with animal fur persists, wild populations are regularly increased by fugitives escaped from fur farms that are spread out all through Europe. The story of golden jackals is like that of raccoon dogs, except that no one deliberately moved the jackals. For many decades they have extended to the west. Even if no one has taken the jackal by the skin of its neck to move it, humans are responsible for the migration of population. By eradicating wolves from a great part of Europe, they left the way clear for the jackal, which was the prey of its cousin. The wolf is twice as big as the jackal and weighs 4 times as much. When running, it can easily reach 50 kilometers an hour. The jackal can run fast too, when its life depends on it. But to escape such a predator, there's no other solution than to get to shelter as soon as possible. Sadly, once in shelter, it's still not safe. The wolf isn't ready to abandon its prey, and the jackal's growls don't impress it at all. If it manages to get into the lair, it will eat the adult and their young. Despite the spiteful blows from its paws, the entry is too narrow, and the predator gives up. Each spring, in a badger or fox's abandoned warren, couples of golden jackals can have up to 12 young. After 7 weeks, the pups take their first steps outside. In a few weeks, they will become independent, capable of defending themselves and to feed by themselves. They will leave their parents forever to go and conquer new territories. Escaping their principal predators, the survival rate of the jackals increases. Each year, more and more young take to the roads. with only natural barriers to limit their migrations, dense forests, snow-covered mountains or wild rivers. But humans are not just responsible for the disappearance of the wolf through most of Europe, but also the fall of these barriers. Humans and jackals share a common affection for flat, clear land. Humans for planting crops or building commercial centers, and the jackal for hunting and moving about easily. One changes the landscape, the other benefits from that. The jackal also benefits from global warming, which opens its way for it across once snow-covered mountains. And since it is discreet, the jackal is at first unnoticed in the new territories it occupies. Slovenia in 1963. Woodcutters found their cabin looted during their absence. There was nothing much inside. No point in telling the police. Even more so since the guilty party was certainly not human, since the object of the crime was laughable. A packet of spicy crisps. The woodcutters at first naturally suspected one of the many foxes present in the region, until they found strange tracks around the cabin, which pointed to a completely different culprit, up until then unknown in the territory. In the 1980s, an Austrian hunter shot at a big fox. But when he approached the dead animal, he thought the hair was very dark. There he was, in front of the first jackal officially in Austria. Even today, to the great regret of Jennifer Hautloff, it's almost always in that state that she manages to meet her subject of study.
Hello, Peter.
Hello, Jennifer.
Super you've got time today.
Willingly.
It's a pleasure.
And a jackal.
A jackal from the neighbouring territory. It was brought to me last week, okay?
Okay.
Since 2015, Jennifer has followed the dispersion of jackals across Europe. The dead animal will allow her to know with certainty the animal's sex, to estimate its age, and to study the population genetically.
Shall we take a sample of the hair now?
Exactly.
Ja, ich nehme da
I'm
jetzt
going
mal
to
eine
take another
Haarprobe, dann
hair
haben wir die
sample,
schon.
like the one we already
Und,
have.
sonst schaue ich
And if
dann
not,
einfach,
I'll just look at
im
the stomach in the
Labor schaue ich dann den
laboratory.
Magen an noch. Das ist gut. Wir machen dazu zum Beispiel
For example, we're
Mageninhaltsanalysen,
analysing
was frisst
stomach
der.
contents.
Man muss
What
die
does it
Raumnutzung
eat?
genauer
The
anschauen. Es werden
utilisation of
Tiere
territory has to be examined
Das
closely.
ist unglaublich
There's
viel
a
noch
lot
zu
left
tun.
to
Sehr
do.
viel spannend.
There's a lot of fascinating research to
Danke
do.
dir. Na
Thanks,
super.
that's great.
Ja,
Do you want me to help you more?
bringe
I'll
das
put it in the car.
Her work could be limited to collecting the proof which attests to the presence of the jackal everywhere in Europe, mainly in the form of bodies. But so as not to be just content waiting for those sad events, she decided to train dogs to look for droppings. For like the maned wolf, jackal droppings have a lot of clues which allow her to better understand the animal.
Ja, super toll.
Super.
Ja, braver Hund.
Yes, good dog.
Super gemacht.
Super, well done. So as to know where to find this precious poo, she has put the country under video surveillance.
It happens. Let me see.
At nightfall, she roams the Austrian countryside to make the jackals sing.
Meine Hauptarbeit
My
hier
main job
besteht darin,
here
ich sammle
consists of collecting observation
Sichtungsmeldungen
reports.
oder
Or,
wenn jemand
if
eine
someone has a
Fotofalle im
photo
Revier
trap on their
stehen hat,
property,
dann
they send
bekomme
me a
ich ein
picture from their photo
Kamerafallbild
trap.
zugeschickt. Ich bestimme
I
dann, ist es ein
determine whether it's a
Goldschakal, ja
golden
oder
jackal
nein.
or
Sehr
not.
oft, mehr als die
Very
Hälfte,
often, over half the
sind es
time,
Falschmeldungen.
it's a false
Aber wenn das
alarm.
eine
But if that shows a potential
potenzielles
presence, the
Vorkommen
following step
zeigt,
is
dann
acoustic
ist als nächster
monitoring.
Schritt das akustische Monitoring. Das heißt, da
That
fahren wir dann
means we
ins
go into the
Gebiet
zone and emit a
und
special
spielen einen
sound, a
speziellen
howl, a
Ton, aber
group
ein
howl,
Heulen, ein
and
Gruppenheulen
we wait
und
for the
warten auf
jackal's
Antwort
response.
von Schakalen. Das ist eine gute
It's a good
Möglichkeit,
way
hier eine
to get
Bestätigung zu
confirmation.
bekommen.
Yes. I think we have an answer from over there. Yes. I think that behind we've got an answer. Oh yes, from that side there.
Since 2007, it has reproduced in the immense reed bed of Neusiedler See National Park in the east of Austria. From there, hundreds of young jackals have left to conquer Western Europe. In 2011, it was caught by the lens of a camera set up in the canton of Geneva. From Switzerland to Savoy, for a jackal it's just a step, which it probably took in 2017. In 2020, it was filmed in Les Deux-Sèvres, at a few hundred kilometers from the Atlantic. The conquest of the West continues. In the north of Europe, it continues to progress. Poland, Denmark, Estonia, it's got to the gates of Finland. It's difficult to estimate, but it seems that the population is close to 100,000 individuals in Europe. In Brazil, far from helping the actions of the maned wolf, the acts of humans have the reverse effect. The conversion of land to agriculture has significantly reduced its habitat. The land surface of Cerrado has reduced by 20% from its original size. The population of maned wolves has collapsed at the same time as the ecosystem of which it is supposed to be the keystone. It is estimated that there are no more than 2,000 wild maned wolves left. Increased by global warming, immense fires ravage Cerrado each year, reducing even further the surface and the population of maned wolves. To stop this infernal spiral, humans have brought back an ancestral technique, controlled fires. By starting fires deliberately when they can be controlled, they favor the regeneration of Cerrado, at the same time limiting the birth of ravaging superfires. Raccoon dogs were displaced to Europe by humans. And in a parallel to that, the jackal has displaced because of changes resulting from human activity. The difference can seem tiny, but for the raccoon dog it changes everything. Because the initial act classes it in the category of dangerous invasive species. From being a venerated yokai, the Tanuki now finds itself damaging and undesirable in Europe. Everywhere in Europe, hunters with the responsibility of limiting the raccoon dog population have authorization to shoot on sight without limits in number or of season. But there's been no clear result. The 200,000 animals killed by hunters every year in Finland are not enough to stop the population expanding. Native animals are adapted to their competitors, prey and predators. Introducing a new species can upset this balance. accidentally arriving in a container, escaping from a farm or deliberately introduced, there are over 12,000 exotic invasive species in Europe. It's estimated that they have contributed to 40% of extinctions in the world. Even if it's not a wildly aggressive and rapid canid, the raccoon dog is still a predator. A predator with efficient flair which comes suddenly into a new ecosystem. Its hunting technique. Seek to the left, to the right, looking for the slightest opportunity. The woodcock is one of those bird species which counts on its camouflage to escape predators and protect its nest. So if during its wanderings, the path of the raccoon dog passes close to the woodcock's nest, the bird has no way of stopping the predator from having a feast. Raccoon dogs aren't the only animal to appreciate an easy meal made of eggs. Forest birds nesting on the ground are used to their nests being preyed on. They have adapted, and their camouflage often lets them escape. It's especially the population of water birds that raise worries. The swimming abilities of raccoon dogs allow it to get to places that were up until now protected from predators. To estimate the impact of the arrival of this new predator, Swedish scientists carried out an experiment. They introduced a raccoon dog to an island at the heart of the Skagerrak National Park. Under the surveillance of a number of cameras, the new predator only took a few days to capture its first prey, a snipe in the neighboring reedbed. At the end of a year and the end of the experiment, waterbird population nesting on the island had dropped by 25%. In Sweden, during the summer, the sun doesn't set and remains visible for 24 hours a day. To protect its exceptional ecosystems from the presence of the raccoon dog and to limit its impact, the Swedish government created the Motherhund project, an audacious project which relies on the animal's biology and its irrepressible desire to be in a couple. For raccoon dogs, the couple is the basis of social organization. Males and females bring up together between 5 and 7 young, which are born in spring. But even when their young have become independent, the couple remains united and fusional. For an adult raccoon dog, there is no alternative. Either be in a couple or try to become part of one.
A lonely raccoon dog just walks and walks all summer, 10 to 20 kilometers a night. It's only got one thing in its head. It must find a new partner. The transmitter enables us to follow them on a web page. We can see how they travel around north of Sweden. When it's been in the same place for a few weeks, we know that it's either found a lot of food or a new partner. Then we go in with trained dogs and professional hunters and take the new partner to sterilize it and leave it someplace else.
Liv and Mikael are tracking an animal which seems to have found its heart's desire. So they leave in search beyond the Arctic Circle in the far north of Sweden. The idea is simple. Rather than counting on the chances of hunting, they use the involuntary help of a sterilized individual carrying a telemetric collar, which they call the Judas animal. Thanks to this transmitter, the animal is easy to find. It's sterile, but has the same instincts and will seek all the same to form a couple. An animal carrying a collar to guide the team in the right direction, specially trained dogs to track the raccoon dog. In theory, the business is simple. But the rains over the last few days have hatched clouds of mosquitoes. Staying immobile becomes unbearable because each square centimetre of exposed skin becomes the target of hundreds of starving insects. After 3 hours of hide and seek, the animal is finally found close by. Now it's the dog's turn to play. For its survival, the raccoon dog adopts a special form of behaviour, thanatosis. If it is captured, it auto-anesthetizes itself and simulates death, which sometimes has the effect of making the predator lose interest. For Liv, this reflex allows her to manipulate the animal without having to give it a sedative and without risking injury. This time, the team doesn't manage to capture the partner of this female. So the animal is released after having been given the usual examination to confirm it is in good health. A Judas animal is precious.
We've picked up raccoon dogs from more or less all of northern Sweden. It's an area the size of New Zealand that we've pushed them out. Today, we deal with a few raccoon dogs per year that have crossed the Finnish border. It's hard, tough, and a lot of work, but very effective.
While the Matthias project has proven its efficiency in limiting raccoon dog population, it also shows remarkable humanity by sparing hundreds of individuals. Everywhere else, despite hunting and trapping, the population is expanding, colonizing new territory each year. Because of the actions of humans, their need to increase fur production in nature, the raccoon dog is found in Europe. Present in Germany, it is arriving in France. One day or another it will settle, bringing its weight to bear on an ecosystem that is already fragilized by our actions. While it is important to act, to slow down as much as possible this progression to leave our ecosystem time to adapt, it's also important to ask ourselves about the methods to use. Because slaughtering several 100,000 animals that are here because of our mistake is neither very efficient nor very humane. Parallel to this, the golden jackal expands by its own methods. While its arrival in our countries is also the consequence of the impact that we have had on our environment, its progressive expansion by little jackal steps should allow the ecosystem to adapt. However, in many countries, it too is considered to be an exotic, invasive species, suffering as a result the same fate as the raccoon dog. On the other side of the Atlantic, the maned wolf is progressively disappearing each time the Cerrado is transformed into a soy field. Its survival depends on our capacity to create reserves, to remove the supports of the ecosystem from our infinite need for growth. "20,000 years after having joined our destiny to that of the wolf to survive, we are imposing an existence of adaptation and upheaval on the Canids. Species are classed according to a hierarchy which answers to our vision of the world, and we take good care not to include Homo sapiens in it, as if we considered ourselves to be outside the natural world. Keystone species or dangerous species? Which are we?